Morning, guys. June 15th, Thursday. I'm Michael Smith. So I had a whole lineup of, topics to continue on: symbols and subliminal messages and predictive programming. And then it became apparent that the universe, the energy, however you want to consider it, is trying to tell me about the ego. Now, the ego is something I've been battling for quite some time myself, and I still battle it to this day. I mean, it's nonstop. But not only am I battling it internally, externally, it feels like it's a war that's nonstop right now, because, in my opinion, that's what social media has created. Is the irony is that here I am on social media talking about how bad it is, but in essence, it's like a drug. Just like when you have too much of something, too much of that one thing becomes addictive or unhealthy, habitual. I mean, any drug is caffeine, cigarettes, soda, anything. Red Bulls are a drug, but it's in the amount you consume it in, which it determines the addictive quality, I guess. Same for street drugs. I mean, they all have medicinal properties in a sense. I mean, cocaine is used in Novocaine. Marijuana, I hate using or I dislike using that word. Cannabis. Marijuana is a propaganda word. Cannabis is a medicinal property as well. I mean, obviously it cures so many things, cancer included. Don't forget, always look into that. Cannabis for cancer. But primarily it's the ego that overrules our world right now. The ego is so strong. There's a concept, I guess let me break it down a little bit, because when I say ego, I mean someone thinks egotistical, but there's a lot more that is tied to it. Sigmund Freud, Dr. Sigmund Freud, he had a concept of three parts of the mind: the id, the ego, and the superego. What they break down to, I mean, I get lost in the exact translations of them, but what's not uncommon is that concept has been handed down through time like infinite amount of time. Our Bible relays it as heaven, earth, and hell. Like Hawaiian tribes, any other tribes that are, by the sea, usually have totem poles. Those totem poles usually represent 3 or 4 things, creatures on that totem pole. And in essence, that's the exact same concept, is the idea of an elevated mind and the earthly quality of mind and the stages in between. Now, the ancient mind goes more into the unconscious, basically the subconscious and the conscious. So there's always like this trifecta going on of personalities within the mind. So you have to be aware that these personalities exist. One of the ideas I like to carry is a multiple personality type person. In reality, we all carry that trait, that ability. I know I do. I'm when I'm mad, I'm mad. When I'm happy, I'm happy. When it's highs, it's highs. When it's lows, it's bottom. I know that's personality type also, but for the most part, that's what we are. There's no in between. There's very little. We don't think about the in between. For us, the in between is the subconscious, the unconscious, and all we focus on is the conscious and the subconscious, basically. The conscious, in my mind, is the ego. Like, that is the character we create in this world. I mentioned it yesterday that the belly crawler was a symbol of that, or it might have been the day before. I get lost. But the belly crawler is symbolic of the ego. The ego is that one characteristic trait that we carry and we uphold as our persona in this world. And in reality, it's this like game character we're creating, because secretly everyone has that secret self within them that if anyone's lucky, they release to somebody that they find that, quote unquote soulmate. But if they're not lucky, more times than none, they're keeping it to themselves. They have so many secrets internally. Some people probably play so many games in the head that it's ridiculous how busy some people can probably be in their head and not even realize, because that busy is just bombardment of ego. So one of the topics that I was going to lead from symbols was a little bit of ego, but it was more about, if your connection to spirit isn't strong, more than likely is due to the fog of your ego that you're in. because the ego is creating this character, it's living this life, it's creating sometimes these lies that, especially in social media, we want to portray this happiness or this, this thrill rush that we're on, or this life-seeking adventure that we're in, but in reality we're at home and doing very little. And the concepts behind it is just so intense because for the most part it's a facade, it's a charade, it's an act in a sense, because we want to be happy. Essentially we are beings that want to be happy. I mean, that's what the moral of the story ends up coming out being. But the steps we take to get there are shortcuts. That's, in my opinion, why magic rituals are performed, for shortcuts, because it's a way of communicating to your subconscious, but it's a way of doing it without directly addressing your subconscious. You kind of just program things into your subconscious, and then with the help of others and the power of the mind, you empower this ability to just shortcut your way into the subconscious. And it's great. Like, if you know what you're doing and you know how it's going and you know what the functionality of it is. I am not against magic rituals, but I am against magic rituals for the purpose of shortcutting. Like, everything I've learned has been through a course of time. I've had to dive into my own ego. You're going to have to dive into your ego, because this character that we're creating is, at this point, a sickness. We're losing touch with our true selves. We're losing touch with that higher, elevated self, because in those totem poles, if you ever notice, the very top creature is a winged creature, and the very bottom creature is that of a lizard or a snake or a serpent, some form of reptilian. I mean, this is where the reptilian concept comes in at. Like, any ancient mind that was carving some form of reptile in a humanoid form, in my opinion, was addressing the ego. It wasn't a form of reptilians or shapeshifters or things that are out there on the internet. Because with everything you have to understand, you have to especially understand that the ego is this amped up character that just wants to do nothing but make you think the bad, make you think the worst, it makes your imagination go haywire, because it wants you to be right. So it creates these like loopholes for yourself to be looked at, to be sought after, to be worshipped upon. This is the mind of the elite. I mean, the egotistical mind. They want power. What happens when you reach an elevation of money and you have no more money to gain, but you're still not happy? I mean, that's what I think is happening, is these individuals are seeking out this money because they think money is going to bring happiness and joy, or they think fame is going to bring happiness or joy, and then they reach this pinnacle, and they're not happy. So then what becomes the next obstacle is power. So you start taking power, you start raping children per se, or you start trying to abuse people that are around you and make them belittled and make them feel little and not worth anything. And it becomes a power trip in a weird sense of the word. But why? Because the ego is running rampant. The ego is making itself present. There's a lot I want to address as far as how to correct the ego, but for right now, just knowing about the ego is half your battle. Because I can guarantee you, more than likely, you're not even thinking about this stuff. You don't really fathom it. You don't really put it into your mind too much. But that's what's holding you back from spirit. Because spirit is, like I say, intelligent. And I think we're at a point now where I can stop emphasizing the fact that spirit is there, because it's present. And that point should just be known. But I really wanted to emphasize to you guys what my idea of spirit was, because I know that some of the things I say, they kind of turn some heads away, because it's fearful, it's frightening, it's, to the Christian mind, to the mind that's usually the most average out there, there isn't much steps taken in order to go figure out these signs and symbols and what they actually mean, where they may have came from, why they're being utilized. That was my goal, that was my mission, is I wanted to know what were symbols about, why were people using symbols, what was the big deal about it. Like, it drove me crazy inside. I mean, in a sense, that was my ego at the time, and I'm more than able to realize that now, and I'm here to realize that I don't want to be in front of this camera all the time for my ego. That's why I'm trying to make it one-a-days. And there's so many different concepts to the ego that you constantly have to be in play with, and you have to be aware, and you have to see what is going on around you, but stemming from you, because we are quick to put ourselves into the outside circle and judge and critique and belittle whoever is out there making the wrong mistake. But in reality, we take very little time to put ourselves in that position, and how we will react, and how will we be, and how will we treat the situations that come up and arise. So you have to be concerned and able to address all those things regarding the ego. It's perspective. You put yourself in the perspective of others, you gain a little higher perspective. But more so is the fact that if you're not even aware of this, you're going to get lost in this ego translation, because that's what the now thing is to be so worried about your selfies and so worried about your friend status or your like status, or it's just crazy. Like, there's a healthy part of it, but then there's a definite unhealthy part of it, and it comes in moderation. How much moderation are you taking in of this specific thing, whether it be social media, whether it be drug, whether it be Red Bulls, whether it be beer, or whether it be cigarettes? It's all in moderation. It's up to you to determine how far you take it. And more times than none, it's the ego that's amping you up, that says, I want that energy, or I want to feel good, or I'm going to make this person feel like crap because I can. Or it's so crazy how far the extent will go. And I think I want to cover a little more pieces of the ego, because the universe is definitely telling me I got to address it. I want to get off the camera before this really interferes with my sound, but it already is. And thank you guys. Michael Smith.